Hi, I'm Jason Arp, City Councilman, 4th District, Fort Wayne, and today we're going to continue our series on individual liberties and freedoms, and we're going to talk about chickens. Last year, I had introduced an ordinance that would allow people to own chickens in the city of Fort Wayne. Lots of places throughout the country and within Indiana actually allow chickens. Indianapolis allows 12 chickens per household. Valparaiso had recently passed an ordinance that would allow for 5. Given kind of the pushback that I knew that we were going to be getting in Fort Wayne, I decided to go with something modeled after the Valparaiso model of just having 5. And the impetus for this was I had a constituent that called me that where she lived is in actual kind of a rural area within the city of Fort Wayne. It's beside her, there's about 100 acres of corn behind her. There's a golf course to the west of her. To the east, about a block and a half, is a horse barn. So yes, it's in the city, but it's surrounded by lots of rural things. And she's had chickens at this location for a decade at least. And one day they just happened to be working on their fence, and they had the privacy fence down. The animal control people were driving by, saw the chickens, and came by and took them. When she called me and told me her story, I thought I'd look into it, and lo and behold, lots of cities allow chickens. And I was surprised. Los Angeles, Seattle, Washington, New York, Chicago, all allow chickens. They all have ordinances that kind of stipulate what the housing for the chickens look like, and whether you can have hens or not, that sort of thing. But for the most part, most places allow you to have chickens. And why is this important? It's an individual liberty thing. It's not a question for me, of why would I want people to have chickens. It's a question of what gives me the right to not let them have chickens. So we'll talk about some of the complaints here. When I brought this forward, I got a lot of pushback from different city organizations. Like animal control was absolutely against it. The health department, the county health department, did not like the idea of chickens. Neighborhood code, planning. There's a lot of them that had some issues with allowing people to have chickens. Some of the complaints that people had was that, well, there'd be too much noise. Others were concerned about the waste and that the manure would end up on other people's properties or that sort of thing. 3, that it would attract vermin, raccoons or foxes or coyotes would come and take the chickens and cause problems in neighborhoods. And the last one, that these chickens could possibly spread diseases. So we'll take these one at a time. One, the ordinance that I was presenting would just allow hens. So you're not going to have the crowing of the rooster first thing in the morning, and hens are actually pretty quiet. There's been a lot of studies that show that hens, on average, are a lot quieter than dogs. I mean, you're not going to be woken up by hens clucking in the middle of the night. Yet, we don't ban dogs because dogs bark. I mean, I've got a friend that was just telling me they actually live out in the country, and their neighbor got a dog, and the dog's been barking, no one can sleep. But as a whole, the community tolerates dogs, so why couldn't they tolerate chickens? So I think the noise thing, particularly when you're talking about hens, is not really a valid complaint. The waste. Well, chickens produce about as much, each hen produces about 1/10 of the average manure that a dog produces. So, and the other thing about chicken manure is that it's actually a very good fertilizer. So, it's a lot less waste than dogs. If you had, so I think a lot of the complaints about the waste are really overstated. Does it smell? Well, it can smell if nobody cleans it up. But if I had a dog that was just piling up manure in my backyard, well, that's going to smell too. So there's not really any difference. It's you got to keep the place clean. You have to do that if you have a cat. You have to do that if you have a dog. We don't ban cats and dogs. There's no reason to ban chickens. 3, the vermin. Well, the ordinance specified the housing that it would have to be in. So, I mean, they would have to have a covered coop, a fenced-in area, so that way they couldn't get loose. And again, I more or less followed the Valparaiso ordinance because it was already ready-made and ready to be introduced. So it kind of specified a lot of the things that would actually keep the vermin out. But again, what's the difference between cats or small dogs attracting, foxes or coyotes or hawks than chickens? I don't think that this is actually a real valid complaint either. And finally, the disease. I mean, you had the county health department come out and talk about how whole flocks of chickens had to be put down in Whitley County because there was a disease there, and that so many thousands of chickens are having to be put down because if they get the bird flu, it travels within the flock and they could all die. Avian flu does not cross over to humans. There's never been a case of people getting bird flu in the United States. So that question about disease, that's not even a valid question either. So these were used to defeat it because apparently there's a lack of respect for individual liberty and people's freedoms. You may not like chickens. You don't have to like chickens. But in order to live in a civil society, we have to be able to tolerate some of the things that other people would really like to do. And there's no point in taking away their freedoms simply because you don't like what it is that they want to do. In this particular case, we're talking about chickens. There is a growing culture of people that want to be able to provide their own eggs and their own food. Backyard gardening is really taking off, and chickens is a big part of that movement. So by not allowing people to legally own chickens, what you do have is people hiding chickens, having chickens in their homes. There's places in town where people are, may have chickens in their bathtubs or whatever. The black market is already supplying urban chickens, and if we were to change the laws to allow them to bring them out into actually decent housing, it'd actually be a better situation for everyone. Better for those people, better for us. So again, it gets back to individual liberty, and I'll end with this quote from Thomas Jefferson. I believe it goes, "I would much rather attend to the inconveniences of too much liberty than those of too less of a degree of it." So again, individual freedom is one of the reasons I got involved in politics, to defend the Constitution and people's rights. So that's the end of our little discussion about chickens. We'll talk about some of the other items we talked about in our kind of kickoff for this series. If you like these videos, please subscribe. Check out our website, jasonarp.com jasonarp.com for more information. And feel free to comment, share, and email me at friendsofjasonarp@gmail.com. Thanks again.